Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dweck, for that kind introduction. I'd just like to dedicate what I'm talking about today to my grandfather, Leon Rosen, who passed away last December. So my name is Hayeem Rudy. In 2015, I volunteered for 8 weeks in a slum outside of Mumbai, India. It's called Kawa. Next slide, please. Okay, so let me transport you roughly 8,000 miles away to the Indian subcontinent, about an hour north of Mumbai. It's called Kawa. It's in the province of Thane, and roughly 2 million people live in this area. It's about the size of Staten Island. It's really small. And so I spent roughly every day, basically from Monday to Friday, of every day volunteering here from 7 a.m. to roughly 5 p.m., teaching children in classrooms, basically hygiene, as well as curriculums that we actually design. Next slide, please.
What language is your interpreter?
Sorry?
How do you speak?
Oh, there was an interpreter. So let me introduce you to Lakshmi. So Lakshmi is the young lady second from your right, or my right, and she's 12 years old. And she was a student in my classroom over the time that I spent in Kawa. Now, you can take any young adult in Yeshiva, Flatbush, or Magen David who's 12 years old and transplant them into Kawa, into a tin-walled classroom that has rubble on the floor with carpets, and they would represent Lakshmi. She's a fierce student, very inquisitive, challenges authority, just like any 12-year-old girl would. On the right, you see Lakshmi's grandmother, who's somewhat concerned that Lakshmi isn't married yet, potentially something that we can relate to in this community. And on her left is her 25-year-old mother, and left of her is her 50-year-old father, who worked in the Mumbai airport for 25 years until it was privatized the summer I was there, and he was laid off. So there's actually some incredible financial stress for a person that's for Lakshmi, who's living in the Kawa slums. And really, she's just like any other girl that we know, except for the fact that when Lakshmi walks to school, she walks barefoot. And when Lakshmi goes to the bathroom in class or in school, she goes to the outhouse. And sometimes people get sick, and she has to travel. When she gets sick or when her brother gets sick, she takes public transportation about an hour south to Mumbai proper, where she gets medical care, because she doesn't trust the sort of doctors that exist in the Kawa slums. So that's Lakshmi. And this is, it's kind of, I feel guilty saying it, but potentially my favorite student that I had the experience or the privilege of interacting with. His name is Raheem. Raheem is a 10-year-old boy, beautiful, beautiful child, inquisitive, questions. And I remember a particular instance where we had asked the children to draw a picture of their family on paper and then label who was in their family in English. And I remember an 8-year-old girl, Parween, coming to me and saying, Teacher Hayeem, what's the English word for sister? And I remember Raheem jumped up from his chair and he said, Hayeem, teacher, no, you can't say that. And he said it in Hindi, and it was interpreted to me. And I said, can you ask him why he doesn't want me to say the name sister to Parween? And the interpreter looked at him and he said, because he doesn't want you to give her the answer, otherwise she won't learn. And I looked over to Raheem and Parween, and I saw them together writing the word sister on her paper. So let me fast forward you to this week. I'm a medical student at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, and I want to take you to a hospital room in the Bronx. And I meet a new patient. He comes into the emergency room. He has some serious abdominal pain, and I'm asking him, what's been going on in your life the last week? And what he tells me is that around 3 days ago, he did 30 bags of heroin and snorted cocaine as well. And he looks at me and he seems like he's in anguish. And I said, can you tell me a little bit about what made you do something like that and what's been going on in your life? And he said to me, I'm incredibly ashamed of myself. I'm embarrassed. I feel like I'm not even a person. And later that day, as I was walking home, I was thinking, what is poverty? How do we define poverty? And I realized that there's material poverty, and then there's poverty that reduces the existence and that reduces somebody's dignity. And I think that those contrasting what we in the West would consider poverty, which is and what comes to mind for a lot of people is slums, like the places that Hayeem and Lakshmi live in. That to me is not quite poverty, and I think that my experience in the Kala slums gave me that perspective to be able to differentiate between those two things, and has served me well as a medical student and just as a person who's trying to develop a set of values to live his life. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
You said poverty level. What was there before when he was working the call? What was his income level?
So my understanding is that someone can subsist in the Kala slums for about $2 to $3 a day. So I don't know exactly how much he was making, but essentially for somebody like him, he really just needs food, he needs shelter, and he needs clothes. And those people, they don't have cell phones, they don't have televisions, there's no radios, but they're happy. They have ways of fulfilling themselves and having rich lives.
A couple of questions for Hayeem. Could you tell us a little bit about what the Gabriel Project is and how you came to know who they are?
Sure. So the Gabriel Project Mumbai was set up by an Israeli businessman who came to India on a business trip. And I don't know if anyone in this audience has ever been to India, but when you're there, you can see when you're flying over the airport, just acres of slums. And one of the largest in Asia is actually Dharavi. It has almost around 8 million people living there. And he saw that and he said, I can't let this happen without doing anything about it. And so he founded the Gabriel Project Mumbai. And what he's tried to form is a self-sufficient ecosystem where where children who would otherwise pick rags from the slums and sell them for around half a cent each, that they can be repurposed and used, they come to classrooms and they're provided a meal which their parents would normally spend money on, and so they get an education and a meal. And the people who make those meals are women who live in the slums who don't have financial independence or any freedom, and he actually pays them to provide those meals. So his ultimate goal is to get corporate sponsors in India.
Do you know what motivated him to start the Gabriel Project?
Yeah, sure. So I think going to India on that business trip and seeing the amount of poverty that he saw made him want to be
And how did you learn about the Gabriel Project?
So I was between my college, I was going into medical school that summer, and I wanted to have sort of a bug to travel and a bug to experience something that I wouldn't have otherwise experienced.
Right now you're in medical school, right?
Yes.
You took time off from medical school or before medical school?
This was the summer going into medical school, so between college and medical school.
All right, so how did you find out about the Gabriel Project?
So the JDC, the Joint Jewish Distribution Committee, has trips for young Jewish professionals or college students to go on. This was one of the ones that I learned about and decided to apply online.
Did the people, first of all, what did you do day to day in India? You said something about teaching students?
Yeah, so our goal was to go into classrooms and teach mainly English, that's the key. So teach English to children. The idea is that if they learn English, they can apply for jobs, they can go to the big cities, and there's potential for upward growth once you know English. So our main goal was to teach English.
Did they know that you were Jewish?
Yeah, they did. So we had a week of lessons where we were showing them cultures from around the world, and one of the things that we showed them was Israel. So we brought hummus, we showed them Israeli dance, we taught them how to do Israeli dance, and we said this is where we're from, we're Jews, and this is our homeland and this is where we're from.
What effect did the trip and the volunteering have on you, if anything?
So I think that coming back, so I'm a medical student in the Bronx where there's a ton of poverty, and I think that when I see somebody who looks at me with my white coat on and they say, oh, there's that privileged doctor, he doesn't quite understand where I'm at. I think going to India has given me a perspective to be able to say, the people who I thought were materially poor, they were happy because they had dignity. And I think that experience gave me the ability to look at somebody and sort of anticipate when they don't feel like they have dignity relative to me, and it's trained me to be able to comfort them and to say, no, I don't think I'm any better than you. I think we're both people, we're at the same level. And I think that potentially I might not have developed that perspective if I hadn't gone to India.
Questions from the audience? Questions from the audience?
Yes.
Mr. Hidayat.
I feel that we should have had some indication before we came here of what he was doing and how it came out, so we have I just ask questions because like now, everything is cold.
So the remark is a valid one.
When I walk out of here,
Mr. Hidayah is asking for Hayeem's email address, which he will give, so that you can have conversations about how he got motivated and how he could send you on your next trip to India.
about the Gabriel organization, what they did, I couldn't hear them too well because I guess my hearing's but it would have been much more exciting if we knew Jerry coming, what to expect. Because somebody asked more questions.
Just one or two more questions. Mr. Tower.
So, Hayeem, looking at these conditions, you got to think that as a medical student, you got to think that disease runs rampant.
Yeah.
And it's not just a single case, but if there's one case of the disease, how do you control the disease from spreading around the slums since the conditions are so, I guess, you know?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think, so Jacob recently, this past year, started something that's called the Shravan Health Clinic. It was named to honor one of the kids who was attending the classrooms who had passed away from a fever. So those are things that in the Western world we don't really die from. So the main goal of that health clinic is not to provide, tertiary care such as setting a fracture or doing some sort of cancer surgery. It provides vaccines and it provides services to pregnant women. So that's their primary goal. And I think that it's a tremendous challenge since it's heavily populated. There's no census to know where people live and who is sick, since most people don't come to the doctor. So it's a tremendous public health challenge to try to control. It's a great question.
One last question, and this is something we've asked most of our speakers this week. Why not something closer to home?
So I think that really what I experienced was mind-opening and eye-opening, and I don't think that I could have satisfied that travel bug that I had if I'd stayed local. I think that there are organizations in New York that deal with severe poverty, and that would have given me the experience that and the revelations that I came to if I not gone to India. But I think that it was something that I really wanted to do. I wanted to go on an adventure. I wanted to explore parts of the world that I wasn't going to otherwise see, and that's really the reason.
Thank you to Hayeem.